back, everyone. Today we've got something that I saw on Amazon and simply decided that I needed to order one. And that is this little flash drive from Team Group. This is the T193, a real catchy name. Unfortunately for Team Group, a lot of their flash drives just kind of have crap names like that. The T193, T183, T whatever, they're all just numeric. But it makes it real obvious which one you're talking about, at least, so they've got that going for them. And what caught my attention was not necessarily the capacity or even the size, capacity or even the speed. This is 128 gigs, this is the highest capacity this one ships in, and it's just a 3.2 Gen 1, which is the longhand bullshit way of saying it's a USB 3 flash drive. But I really liked the design on this one. We've got a little bitty ruler and I'm not going to call it a protractor, more of an angle finder built into this drive. So we've got 128 gig drive. Do they offer a performance promise? No, there's just a bunch of various capacity data. You know, how many photos, how much music, how much video you could put in it. And of course, all those numbers are entirely meaningless. But it's a 128 gig drive, and we've got a nice aluminum enclosure and some plastic there. So let's go ahead and just pop it out. And get a look at what's going on in here. So I like that. That was probably the easiest to open packaging I've dealt with in a while. And can we... Oh, we'll zoom on this in post. So it closes nice and flat. This feels like very, very decent, stiff. It's probably acrylic, although it doesn't feel as fragile as a lot of acrylic. Looks like we actually have a couple of features in here that weren't called out. No, it does call it out. So we've got a magnifier, a ruler, and a protractor. So if we... Oh, that's nice. So at each increment, which appear to be in 15 degrees, so 0, 15, 30, 45, it snaps. There's little indents. So that's nice and stiff, although I bet that's probably going to work loose in time. You can probably see it bounce a little when I hit each one of those. And if we fold it out, we've got probably not the best rule in the world, but a nice little 12 centimeter straight edge, which would make it just shy of 5 inches, just under 4 3/4, which, yeah, just under 4 3/4. We're actually closer to like 11/16, 4 11/16. Yeah. So 4 11/16 on the ruler. It's got a couple of little notches in it, and seems to be pretty accurate. Let's grab a piece of graph paper here and see that, yeah, 90 is 90 is 90. Let's see, I've got a pencil here. My little R600. We are at 90 degrees. All right, so it looks like it's not quite perfect on its notches. We've got some deviation from my printed graph paper here. This is from the Rocketbook people. I like to print this out because I can mark it in and scan it when I'm done. So, as far as the straight section's concerned, that was fine, and I've got it locked at 90, and it's not quite perfect. I'd take a guess that that's probably closer to 89 degrees. Certainly good enough for estimation and as a tool in the field, but not good enough for construction or engineering work, which is, it's a flash drive. So that's really a good place for it to be. That makes it a little bit more useful than just being another 128 gig flash drive. You know, we got our little magnifying glass. The ruler itself seems fairly accurate, but if you look, there is a gap between 6 and 7 centimeters that, if what you're reading is in there, you're not going to get an exact measurement either. So, overall, a little bit gimmicky, but not terrible. One thing that they neglected to do is, realistically, if I was designing this, the biggest change I would make is I would stop it at 11 centimeters instead of going for the full 12, which I do realize makes these two look a little bit uneven. It might not make for as nice as a marketing photo, but what it does solve, and let's grab my laptop here so we can get to some testing. We're not going to do separate videos for this, is I can't plug this in while it's open. This has to be open to at least 45 degrees to be opened, and now this is hanging out here, and I'm sure a lot of people are just going to open it right up, and now I've got a lot sticking out. Yeah, it needs to be open to at least 45 to be used. Alright, with that said, Windows picked it right up. Showed up as Drive F. It looks like we ship as exFAT, which is good. And there's nothing on it. It's just a blank flash drive. Straighten that up a little bit. Alright, so with that out of the way, we're going to fire up OBS and start recording. And we're going to open up Chip Genius, which is going to give me as much information as it can. The controller was not recognized. Please try powerful detection. Okay. Controller part unknown. Well, that's interesting. So whatever controller they're using is a relatively recent one. The database, my latest version of Chip Genius here, was updated in 2018. So I wonder if I can get a new one. If I can get that, I'll throw it in the text here when we're done. But it's definitely a recent controller. It's less than 2 years old. So that's good. Let's go ahead and, you know what, I don't suppose this version, no, God, that version was from 2015. Alright, so we're going to go ahead and start with Crystal Disk Mark. And I think I need to use Crystal Disk Mark 5 to be comparable to some of my previous flash drive testing. Alright, so our first set of results are in, and honestly, I'm not super disappointed here, although I am a bit surprised. So, on older flash drives, even some that I was absolutely astounded with, like the Mushkin Impact, their random performance was typically in the low single digits. In fact, just looking back at a review I did on the DT50, The 5 drives I compared were the Mushkin Impact, Mushkin Atom, DT50, DT Micro Duo, and the C20C from Lexar. Their random writes were all below 0.6. In fact, I think it was the C20C, which wasn't even one of the top performing drives, that managed a 0.583. So our random performance here is actually relatively impressive for a flash drive. 10.5, 10.0 on the 4Ks with reads of 11 and 9. Those are great numbers. In fact, for a primarily read-focused operating system, running on this flash drive wouldn't be terrible. The other side of that is that our sequential writes aren't that great. And part of the reason that, I have drives like the Mushkin Impact in my bag all the time is because that'll write at 300 megs a second, no problem. The reads on this are fantastic. The write speeds just aren't super impressive. So we definitely have a better controller than older flash drives. If I had to take a guess, I'd say we're looking at a drive built on TLC NAND. And what isn't happening is any kind of write acceleration scheme. There's no... You know what? Okay, so we went ahead and reran Crystal Disk Mark, and what I changed was the Windows setting for better performance as opposed to faster removal for the drive. I have found with some products they'll ship with things like write caching disabled, and what I noticed was this was kind of behaving like a TLC SSD without its SLC cache enabled. Now when I went to enable those things, of course write caching wasn't available for this drive, so we got exactly the same performance within the realm of test-to-test variants. I also took a minute to look up the product specifications, and Team only actually specifies a 90 meg per second maximum read and a 35 meg per second maximum write. So when we're seeing, and we'll just use the straight sequential number here in Crystal Disk Mark, 34.76 meg writes, which I'll probably get higher numbers in Atto in a minute, and 240.9 per second, or megabyte per second reads, I'm going to call it close enough to the manufacturer's spec. The fact that I have relatively decent random performance for a flash drive is a huge bonus. And although this probably wouldn't be my first choice if I was in a hurry or trying to move, a large volume of data onto the drive, the fact that I get a respectable write and a pretty good read would make it a good choice for periodically writing small chunks of data to that I then want to read off relatively quickly. Things like backing up a few photos at a time, short video clips, just generic document storage. Based on the design of this drive, maybe engineering documents wouldn't be inappropriate. All fit within these numbers. So let's go ahead and keep going through with our testing. We're going to go ahead and run Atto next. And this is drive F, queue depth of 10. And I just want to make sure I use the same settings as before, which are 512 to 64 with a 1 gig total length. And we're going to start this. Alright, so we've got our results out of Atto, and they're basically a confirmation of what we were seeing in Crystal Disk Mark. Reads reached as high as 261 megabytes per second, and writes were, well, it looks like they peaked at about 32 megs a second. A little bit lower than we saw, but all in all, not terrible performance considering we know where the drive specifications. All right, so where does that really leave us with the T193? It exceeds its listed specs, and from the standpoint of its design, seems fairly close to what its intent is, but not quite. In fact, let's check. Maybe it was me. What angle this really gave us. All right, so that's 90. It looks like we actually got... Let's make sure that that's in place. It looks like that we actually got 89.5 degrees instead of 90. In fact, if I... Yeah. 89.5. That's, considering its construction, 2 pieces, acrylic and aluminum, that it is a commodity device and that I paid a relatively small sum for it. Let's see here. That I paid an astounding $18.89, which is a little bit high for a 128 gig drive, but not terrible. Actually, I stand corrected. A 128 gig drive on Amazon today from your typical reputable vendors, you know, SanDisk, Samsung, is going to run anywhere from $15.99 to $20. I guess I'm a little bit spoiled. Micro Center, I know we can get them there for like $12.99. So pricing, it's not far off from where it should be. You're paying an extra $1 for the fact that there's a ruler in it, we'll say. But their performance is reasonable. It's not the top of its class. The measurement side seems accurate enough to at least be useful in a pinch. The locking protractor portion seems to work fairly well. Let's go ahead and line this back up. I think we've got one more thing it should be able to do, and that is, come on. I guess it's probably easier as a pull than a push. So I should be able to grab this and pull an arc out of it. It has its uses. The magnifier is certainly a nice added bonus as well. Would I buy one again? Potentially. I do like the design. It, like I said, it does certainly have an appeal if I wanted to keep building drawings or something like that on it, just thematically. Construction-wise, it's aluminum and acrylic. There's not much to say about that. I don't really anticipate it failing. The fact that the connector is part of the drive that drives a unibody of sorts is certainly to its benefit. The one thing I could see potentially happening is I could see this acrylic bit, well, it's not going to pop out, potentially snapping. And my first thought was that it might pop loose here, but that is It appears to be press fit and locked with tabs all the way around, so you'd have to break it off as opposed to having it pop loose. That said, there's definitely a weak point right here where the two materials meet. That's where it's thinnest. They did make a beveled design on it. The profile's not flat, so that's certainly to its advantage mechanically. So, anyway, where does all that rambling leave me? I like it. It's a nice design. I wish it was a little quicker. I'm not super upset at the performance I got out of it for less than 20 bucks. It's certainly faster than some of the 128s that I bought places like Micro Center. Team clearly isn't just sitting on their thumbs for the read performance and the random performance I got. They clearly have a decent controller in here. So, I guess that's my long way of saying I like it. I'm going to keep it. It's going to end up in my bag. It's not just going to go back to Amazon when I'm done here. And maybe I'll order one of their other themed drives. They call this their T-Series drives. They've actually got 3 of them. They've got a T183, a T171, and then this is the T193. The 183 is a bottle opener. It's a knife. It's got a little ruler on it. Probably the one I should have started with. Definitely, I could see myself using it more often than this, just with a little knife in it, although I generally carry a pocket knife. But I don't see myself looking at the T171. That's just a 20th anniversary high-impact style drive. And there's plenty of other rugged drives we looked at. We looked at one from Lexar that we were happy enough with. I don't really see the draw for these high durability drives. Usually they spend all this focus on making the body of the drive super difficult to destroy, and then they just stick a standard USB connector on it that has a cap, so when it's in a computer you can just snap it right off anyway. So I don't see the value to that particular design. But I will definitely get one of the 183s to look at. I was, like I said, the results, the performance on this is good. And I guess that's where I have to close this. The price isn't bad. The performance is good. And the added functionality, the ruler, has its flaw. You can't read between 6 and 7 very well. It looks like you could actually read 6.7, 8, 9, and then 7. So anything from 6.1 to 6.6, you just can't read. The Protractor side, 180 degrees is definitely on the money. 90 degrees was about half a degree off, so good enough for estimates and anything that's not actually going to be used as a production drawing, as long as you're happy with, we'll say, plus or minus half a degree. And if you can't live with plus or minus half a degree, you should be using something better than a Flashdrive's Protractor. This is certainly a step above your typical included kit that would have a protractor in it for back to school and that type of thing. And this would certainly be a good gift for anyone who's engineering inclined. It's got a good design, it's got a good look to it, and I would be happy receiving this as a gift, and I like it enough I went and bought it for myself. So with all that rambling out of the way, I've probably spent an hour running various tests on this thing now, although this will probably get edited down to 10 or 15 minutes or so. I want to thank Alextrix for providing our opening and closing themes, as always. I want to thank our patrons for helping support our content. If you want to see more stuff like this, definitely check out our Patreon. And there'll be a link to it in the description below. There'll also be a link to Electrix's channel. You should definitely check out some of his music. That being said, thank you for watching.